you? Happy International Day of People with Disability. Thanks for coming along to help us celebrate with today's talk by Carol Cooke. My name's Karen and I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Project Manager for Frankston City Council, and I'll be the MC for the night. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging the lands on which we meet today. Frankston City Council is situated on the traditional land of the Boonwurrung and Bunurong. In this place we now know by its European name, Frankston. We recognise the contribution of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to our community in the past, present and into the future. Just for a bit of housekeeping, we do have live captioning of tonight's event. If it's not already popping up on your screen, please click on the CC icon, which is on the Zoom panel at the bottom of your screen. You can select it to pop up at the bottom of your screen or select it to be a transcript, which will go along the side of your screen. Also under the CC icon, there are settings where you can change how big the writing is for you. Now, tonight's event will be recorded, so we ask that all participants please keep themselves on mute so you don't pop up in the recording. We will be having questions at the end of tonight's talk, so if you do have a question for Carol, please feel free to type it into the chat. You'll find the chat function at the bottom. It's the little speaking icon at the bottom, and you can add it in there. That's also where you can report any issues. Just send it directly to me. Now we'll get started. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Carol Cooke. Carol is a 3-time Paralympian gold medalist in cycling. She's won 9 gold and 5 silver medals in the World Paracycling Championships, is the author of the book Finding Your Inner Gold, is an ambassador for MS Australia, and is a member of the Order of Australia for her service to sport and philanthropy. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you so much for having me tonight, Karen. It's wonderful to be here on such an auspicious day, International Day of People with Disability. And I'm just going to share my screen. Got a little presentation here. And, oh, we've gone too far. I don't know why that happened. Okay, here we go. So again, thank you for having me. I like to title my talks One Dream, because I think that we all have a dream in life and a goal. And I just happen to have had a dream that took 41 years, across 2 countries and 3 sports. I grew up in Canada, as you can probably tell from my accent, or you might have thought I was American, which is not a really good thing for Canadians. But I grew up in Canada and sport was my life. As a 7-year-old watching the 1968 Mexico Olympics, I wanted to be an Olympic gymnast for Canada. And at the age of 9, which is the picture that you're seeing right now, I was told by a very uncaring woman at an elite gymnastics club that I was too fat for gymnastics. They didn't even let me show them what I could do. I was just too fat. Needless to say, I went home in absolute tears. But I have a mom who taught me to think outside the box. She was amazing for, such an early age to teach me that. And she told me that if I wanted to do gymnastics, to keep doing gymnastics and not let what anybody else said matter. But if I wanted to go to the Olympics, that maybe I should try another sport. That's when my love for swimming took hold. And by the time I was 15, I was aiming for the 1980 Moscow Olympics. And I was doing pretty good. Now, whether I would have made it or not, I don't know, because I didn't have the chance. That was when the US decided to boycott the Olympic Games. And Canada followed suit. Australians were very lucky. Australia and Great Britain were the only 2 countries that let their athletes decide whether they wanted to go or not. So at that point, I had to do something else. But I'll tell you a little bit about growing up in Canada. So I grew up as the oldest sibling, just 2 of us, my sister and And I grew up with a police officer family. My mom and dad were both police officers, my grandfather, a great uncle, and a cousin. And my mom was actually the 14th woman ever hired on the Toronto Police Force. But when she and my dad got married, one of them had to leave. And obviously, back in the 1960s, early 60s, that was my mom. I always said I would never, ever be a police officer because there were too many in our family already. But after high school and not having the Olympics to look at, my mom's teaching of thinking outside that box came back to me, and I thought, what am I going to do? So I joined the police force as a clerk. But I was typing up all the major stories for the newspapers, and it got under my skin, and I thought I could go out and make a difference. So I ended up joining the Toronto Police Force, where I spent 14 years. I spent about 4 years in uniform, and then I moved into working undercover. And in the bottom left of that slide, you'll see the only picture I have of me working undercover. And in that little bag I was carrying was a whole bunch of drugs that I just bought in this bodega. It was exciting. I really enjoyed it. I then moved into criminal investigations, and I investigated everything from minor thefts and assisted on murder inquiries. I thought it was exciting. My mom wasn't too sure about that because back in the late 50s when she was on the job, women just didn't really do that. By 1992, I was feeling a little bit jaded by the job, and it had to do with one case in particular. And I decided to take a year leave of absence. I needed to decide whether I wanted to continue in this line of work. So I traveled to Australia and decided to drive 34,500 kilometers around this absolutely beautiful country. And what a year it was. And then I met my future husband. Life in Australia was incredible. It started, I came down here and I thought, wow, where else in the world can you actually swim in the middle of winter in an outdoor pool? I couldn't do that in Canada. It was just a little bit too cold. And it's funny how life takes you in different directions. So I moved to Australia in 1994 and started a whole new life. Married my husband in 1995. I joined a master's club, a swim club, and started building a whole new life and got a job at Australia Post. I started as a delivery driver and I was working my way up the corporate ladder. We bought a house and I made new friends and life was fabulous. I couldn't have asked for anything more. But then, on the 23rd of April, 1998, life suddenly changed. It was when I had suddenly got these really unusual symptoms that I thought was attributed to an inner ear infection. I'd been a swimmer and I was swimming when they all came on. But after an MRI and a few other tests, I went back to see the neurologist that I had been sent to get the results. Now, all my symptoms were gone. So I looked fine, and I was fine. And this was on the 23rd of April, 98. And it was 2:15 p.m. And it's funny how dates and times stick in your brain. I figured I was wasting his time because the symptoms were gone. And as I walked into his office, he was in a hurry. And he gruffly asked me to sit down. So I thought, yes, this will be good news. He pulled a big film out of an envelope and he held it to the ceiling. And he said, well, there's too many lesions on your brain for someone your age. Basically, your life as you know it is over. You have multiple sclerosis, and I would suggest you go home and put your affairs in order before you become incapacitated. This was my MRI that he showed me, and those little arrows point to the lesions. At that moment, I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. And I said only one word that day. I looked at him and I said, what? And he again, sounding very angry, said to me, oh, you heard me. You have MS. So you won't be doing this silly sports stuff anymore. and you'll have to quit work and go on a whole bunch of drugs. And to be honest, I really don't have time for you as a patient. I've got enough people with MS to deal with. So I'd suggest you go back to your GP. He can look after you. And with that, he walked to the door as he was putting the film back into the envelope. I was still sitting in the chair. And he looked at me as he opened the door and he said, "Hurry up, I've got people waiting." And as I got up and walked towards him, he slammed the envelope with the MRI film onto my chest. He said, "Oh, and see my secretary on the way out." Now, this was in an old building in Kew in Melbourne, and it was an old Victorian house converted into doctor's offices. And that hallway was the longest hallway in the world at that moment. It just seemed to never end. I couldn't get out of there faster. And as I passed his secretary's office on the way out, she yelled, "Mrs. Cooke, Mrs. Cooke." And I just put my hand on the door handle and I walked out. Once I left the building, I don't remember driving home. I remember making decisions that you should never make in trauma. And luckily, my husband came home and he set me straight, because I had decided I was giving him a divorce. I was giving him the house we had just bought, and I was going home to let my family look after me because I was told I would be incapacitated. And I thought, worst case scenario, completely, because I didn't know anything and I didn't have any knowledge. And my husband said to me, he said, "You don't have it, we have it, and we need to find out about it so we can deal with it." So life pretty much continued on, and I was still working with Australia Post. I was still getting promoted, and I found it very interesting because MS is a disease of the central nervous system. So it affects the brain, the spinal cord, and the optic nerves. And the symptoms, a lot of the symptoms are completely invisible. So I dealt with a lot of fatigue. I dealt with pins and needles, balance issues. I had bowel and bladder problems. And I found that people at work just didn't understand. They didn't understand why I couldn't work for 12 to 16 hours a day, and that I had to leave so that I could get on a tram and be able to actually get off the tram and walk when I got to my destination, because the fatigue is so bad, you just cannot do anything. The fatigue is the type of fatigue where I could sleep for 8 hours and still not be able to actually physically get out of bed. So that was a real issue with it. I think one of the other things about having an invisible disability is if I did drive into work and tried to park in a disabled parking spot, which I had every access to do, I had my sticker, because of my fatigue and not being able to walk long distances, I would get hassled by people who didn't understand that I was parking there because I was allowed to, because I looked fine. And I wish I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, "But you look so good." So I like to talk to people about, oh, sorry, I forgot about this slide. So this is what MS is. So there is no cause or cure. What it is the myelin, which is a fatty type substance around our nerves, which protects the nerve so that the messages can flow through easily, gets attacked. My body thinks that there's something wrong with it, so it attacks it in multiple places. So that when the message goes from one end to the other of that nerve, whichever it may be and can be anywhere in the body, it stops and it says it's not safe to pass. Eventually, it can repair itself. And that's the type of MS I have, which is relapsing and remitting MS. So I can have an attack, it can repair itself, and I can pretty much go back to normal. There is progressive MS, which once you have it, it just continues to cause disability and sends you downhill. And there's a secondary progressive, which usually might happen to about 80% of people after 20 years, where you'll get some sort of deterioration in your abilities. There is no cause and no cure as of yet. No two people are alike. We can all have similar symptoms, but we don't present the same. And none of us can say, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened to me, because it's all so different. The average age of onset is 32 years, but I think the youngest in Australia diagnosed has been 4 out in WA. And it is a temperate disease. So you will find most people who have MS live farther away from the equator. And they do say that if you move before the age of 12 from a temperate climate closer to the equator, your chances of contracting MS go down quite a bit. So, how to deal with what life throws at you. And this can be for anybody, not just somebody with a disease or a disability. And I do like Winnie the Pooh. So I tend to use Tigger in my presentations. And Tigger says, life is not about how fast you run or how high you climb, but how well you bounce. And it's so true. And it's how we deal with things that happen to us in life. And it probably took me a good 6 months to come to terms with the fact that I now had a chronic illness. But I decided that I had MS. It didn't have me. And I wasn't going to let MS dictate what I could and couldn't do. And I certainly wasn't going to let a doctor tell me what I could and couldn't do. So life continued on. My introduction to disability began in 2001 after a number of hospitalizations and relapses, and I ended up using a wheelchair full time for a couple of years. I was lucky that I had some amazing doctors, and one rehab doctor in particular decided to use Botox and try and get me out of that chair. And it did. It worked with a lot of physical therapy, more Botox, and then I got back into sport. I was able to get back out of that chair, back into the pool, learning how to walk again, doing exercises, which led me to a number of other sports. It was also a time that I founded the 24-hour Mega Swim because I had to leave full-time employment. My employer certainly wasn't disability friendly, and I was having a lot of issues with trying to get my wheelchair into my office and behind my desk, and nobody wanted to help, which I'm hoping has really changed now. So I needed something to do, and I founded the 24-hour Mega Swim, which raises money to give scholarships to people living with MS to follow a dream. I just happened to be one of the recipients of one of those scholarships in 2005. And that helped me go to the World Masters Games, which for the first time ever had para categories in swimming and athletics. And I did really well in the swimming and came back with a whole swag of medals. And upon coming home, the Australian Paralympic Committee contacted me and asked me to come to a talent search day. Well, they didn't realize how old I was, because talent search days are usually for kids or into early 20s, and masters swimming starts at 25. So I think they might have assumed I was around that age. In fact, I was 45. And when I showed up, I was 24 years older than the oldest person. But I did the testing, and about 2 weeks later, I got a letter asking me to take up the sport of rowing. It was amazing because I was like, I've never picked up an oar in my life. I've never been a rower, but it's on water and I love water. It's a good thing I knew how to swim, because while I was learning to row on the Yarra, I fell in a few times and I kind of had to save myself to not drown in that murky, lovely water that we call the upside down river. And in 2008, I was actually selected on the national team in a Coxed 4. And we were trying to qualify for the Beijing Paralympics. Now, rowing was a brand new sport in Beijing, and they had qualified, most of the boats had qualified the year before at the World Championships, but there were 3 spots up for grab. And we went to Germany, to the World Cup, and we were sure we were going to get in. We went there positive. Unfortunately, we missed by 0.8 of a second. So quicker than the snap of your finger. And I was devastated because I thought, my dream of representing my country at the Olympics as a swimmer had been dashed by politics. And now I thought, oh, I'm getting another chance. And it got dashed by a photo finish. And I just thought at this age, at that point I was 47, I thought, I just cannot do this anymore. How can I train like this? And my sister gave me a quick swift up the butt through cyberspace and said, why are you talking that way? Why don't you just row because you enjoy it and take it one day at a time? And she was so right, because I did that. And the next year I ended up on the national team again, where we came sixth at the World Championships. So we were really excited that we were going to maybe spend 3 years together and be ready for London 2012. But unfortunately, another roadblock, politics in sport, played a part in our crew actually having a boat there. They were more interested in the more disabled crews. And so that was where rowing kind of took a back seat to a new sport. And I just thought, well, I might as well jump across and try something else. And I did. I switched sports to cycling. Now, because of my balance, I can't ride two wheels. So I like to call my trike a little trike on steroids, because it's very similar. It's a normal bike frame at the front, and where the back wheel is, there's a little axle that comes off with two wheels. And it was probably the best thing I'd ever done, was to switch sports, because I actually made the team to London. And even though I had to race the men in London because there weren't enough women, I actually won the gold medal in the time trial. It was factored, so it was like a handicap, because it took in 2 categories of disability and both men and women. But I was just over the moon. And I ended up 7th in the road race, which wasn't handicapped, but I was the first female. Now, many people would say that that was success. But I didn't think that my gold medal was the success at all. I think the success was finally just getting there. It might not have been the Olympics, it was the Paralympics. It might not have been in swimming, it was in cycling. And it might not have been for Canada, it was for Australia. But I was so happy to be there. It was such an amazing, amazing experience. So my next goal was to win the World Championships and to beat this lady in the left-hand side of the picture, who just happens to be Canadian and had been the world champion in 2011. And this picture was taken at the race in 2013, which World Championships were in Canada. And that was the line. I got her on the line. So I've gone on, as Karen said, to win 9 World Championships and 5 silver medals. And then, of course, all of a sudden, as I took it year by year, Rio was upon us. It was less than a year away, and I thought, wow, I'm going to do this again. And I didn't have to race the men this time, just the women. And at that point, I ended up winning both the time trial and the road race. I was hoping to be in Tokyo this year, but as we know, COVID has changed all of that for all of us. But I'm still training hard and for next year, and hopefully we'll be in Tokyo representing Australia again. So would I change history if I could? I got asked this by a 9-year-old once at a school after London, actually. And it really hit me that I'd never ever thought about that. And I decided that the diagnosis made me who I am. And it's given me opportunities that I never ever would have had if I didn't get diagnosed with MS. So no, I wouldn't change it. I'm an ambassador for MS, an advocate for people who can't speak up. I've become an elite athlete in rowing and cycling. I've been to both the Paralympic Games, World Championships, traveled around the world, which has been incredible, to places I never ever would have gone to. And the 24-hour mega swim. We've now had 20 years of mega swim and raised just over $11 million for people living with MS to follow a dream. And MS has taught me some lessons, that nothing is impossible if we dare to face our fears and believe in ourselves. We really can accomplish anything. And as long as we believe in ourselves, it doesn't matter how old we are either. That we have to love the journey and not the destination. And I think my sister taught me this when we didn't make it in rowing, because I was writing a blog and I kept telling everybody about our goal and our destination. But she said that she loved the journey more than anything. It wasn't about the destination. So I think we have to look at life that way, because today's not a dress rehearsal. Today is the only guarantee that we get. If we messed up yesterday, we can take learnings from it, but we can't go back and change it. And we can bring those learnings in today and those lessons and use them for today and tomorrow. And we don't know what's going to happen to tomorrow. Third point is to be happy and think of life as a terminal illness, because if you do, you'll live it with the passion that it ought to be lived. We don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, and today might be the only day that we get. So live it to the best of your ability. And see every difficulty as a challenge, a stepping stone, and never be defeated by anything or anyone. And I really think that my mom taught me this when she taught me to think outside that square as a young gymnast switching to swimming. And I've used that throughout, never let anybody tell you and challenge you that you can't do something. And it happened to me in rowing. When I first started rowing, I was told I would never be good enough or strong enough. I was also told I was too old as a para rower. And I think, my pig-headed and stubbornness that I was probably born with and brought into my life as I grew up has helped me a lot, because I wanted to make sure that I was doing things that I wanted to do and not what somebody else was dictating I should do. And what has COVID-19 taught me this year? Well, it's amazing how everybody is working from home. And I actually know people who live with a disability who have been turned down for jobs because they couldn't get into the office 5 days a week because they wouldn't do work. Well, funny enough, it hasn't worked out that way. And I really think that this is a major area where, as the motto for this year's International Day of People with Disabilities is Build Back Better. We need to build that back better with industry. We need to tell businesses that we have proven that somebody with a disability can hold down the same job as anybody else, even if they have to work from home, because it's been done this year by all of us. So I think it's really important that that's the one thing that we push our government to push through industry and businesses, that we're all equal. Doesn't matter that we maybe can't use our legs or our arms, and maybe we use a wheelchair with a mouthpiece, or we use software that we type on a computer by speaking to it. And the list goes on. So I think it's really important for us to be vocal about that. And the other thing is that we really have to be grateful for everything that we have in life, whether we live with a disability or not. I think the one thing that I did this year, which really helped me through the year, I've had a friend and my sister as well, who are both into meditation. And I swore, that won't do anything for me. But funny enough, I decided I would give it a go. And I used the Calm app to just do a trial, 21 days of learning how to meditate. And I got hooked. And I can honestly say that today was day 245 of not missing one day of my 10-minute meditation first thing in the morning. And I feel that it has kept me grounded. And the other thing I did was I started writing a gratitude journal. And so every night before I go to bed, I write 3 things that I'm grateful for in that day. And believe me, at the beginning, it was not easy, because everything seemed to be going wrong in the world. And I thought, what the heck do we have to be grateful for? With the deaths and the people getting sick, and the fact that all my family is in Canada. My husband and his children and the grandchildren are here, but we couldn't even see them because they live outside of Melbourne. So, I thought, what is there to be grateful for? But I persevered. And when you actually walk around and look, when I'd go out and take the dog for a walk, there is a lot to be grateful for. And, I have a roof over my head and I've got food in my stomach. And yes, I could still train on my indoor trainer. Yes, I could go out and ride 5K around my house. But, we all suffered to get to where we are now. And it taught me to be grateful for everybody who's done the right thing so that we are where we are right now. So there's 4 things that I think we have to always think about. And that's to dream big. And I don't care how old you are, where you live, what your status is, if you have a job, if you don't have a job, whatever your life is, you need to dream big. Because if you believe in yourself, which is number 3, you can make that dream come true. We have to take 2 words out of our vocabulary: can't and never. If I worried about the number of people who told me that I would never be able to do anything, or I'd never be able to do gymnastics, or I'd never make the national team rowing, then I would be leading a pretty solitary, quiet life. It would never have led me on to do other things. So those 2 words are really bad as far as I'm concerned. As I said before, always believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. And again, be thankful. That doctor at my initial diagnosis, when he told me that my life as I knew it was over, was so right. He was thinking in a very negative way, and I like to think of it in a positive way. My life as I knew it was over, big time, very much so. But my new life is even more exciting, because who knows where I would have been at this point. I'd probably be very stressed out corporate person who was climbing that corporate ladder with Australia Post. And I don't know, I think the life I have right now has done me much better. And I think that, to have dreams and to be believing in yourself and to be thankful for everything you're given has had me in good stead over the last 9 months of this year, when we went into lockdown and I knew that Tokyo was now going to be postponed, and we weren't even sure if it would actually go ahead. I thought, I've got to do something, and I decided that I would write another book. And I started putting my thoughts down on my computer in April, and on August 25th I finished my second book. And it's kind of a poignant date, because August 25th would have been the start of the Tokyo Paralympics. But I finished my book. My first one I self-published. Now I've actually signed a publishing deal. So I've got a publisher that believes in me as much as I believed in the story that I had to tell. So it can work. And being grateful for everything, I think, has helped me get through this year. So I would like to thank you for listening, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Wow, thank you, Carol. What a wonderful, full and varied life that you've had. And thank you for sharing those experiences and the lessons with us. Really appreciate that. So we will be asking Carol some questions. So if you'd like to ask her one, please pop it in the chat and I'll read it out to you on your behalf, sorry. I did want to ask a couple of questions about International Day of People with Disability. Obviously, you touched on the fact that one of the themes that has been floating around the internet is Build Back Better, and you touched on that in your speech, so thank you. The other theme that has been floated around is that not all disabilities are visible, and obviously MS is an invisible disability. So I was wondering if you could help us understand how perhaps the invisibility of disability can add extra challenges, and perhaps what message you would like to share with the community on this theme and what lessons we should learn.
Yeah, sure. As I said, if I had $1 for every time somebody said, "But you look so good," because they couldn't see what I was experiencing. And even now, as a paracyclist, yes, I might be on a trike, but people look at me and they go, well, what is your disability? You know, when I say MS, and I go, well, what are the issues? Well, I can't balance. And if I'm with my trike, but I'm having a coffee, I don't have my walking stick. But when I'm outside walking, I have a walking stick. So at least there is a visible presence. I get a lot of people saying, oh, what'd you do to your knee or your hip? And I say, oh, no, they're fine. Um, and even riding, like I have neuro pain. So that's very invisible in my feet, and it's 24/7. And so I'm heat intolerant because of my MS. And when my body core temperature goes up, or I get tired or fatigued, the neuro pain gets worse. So it gets to the point where it's almost like stepping on hot coals or sharp spikes every pedal stroke. And people just don't. They go, but you're still pedaling. Yeah, but it's absolutely killing me. You know. And again, with the disability parking, that's a huge one. And I've had friends who have come back to their car and have had big, huge sticky notes plastered over the driver's side window that they can't get off, saying, this is a disabled spot. How dare you park in it? Because somebody has watched them walk away looking not disabled. But they have to park close because they might only be able to walk 100 meters and no further. And to get back to their car, they need it to be close. So I think as a community, we have to start being more empathetic. And yes, you are going to get those people who are going to park in those disabled spots who shouldn't be there. But if somebody has a disability permit, I think we have to realize that, hey, maybe there is an issue and we just can't see it. And I think that's getting the wider public to understand that. Not us who live with a disability, because we don't, we know that. I always look for the disabled sticker, and if they don't have it, I'll say something to them like, hey, do you have a disability? I won't go ranting that, you shouldn't be parking there, like a lot of people have done to me. So I think that's really important. And again, as I said, getting people back into the workforce, making a building accessible so that if they want to do a couple days in the office, they can actually get in. I have a girlfriend who works in the building trade doing exactly that, which is great in Australia. But I think we have to push it outside of our country. Our country, we are so lucky. And having traveled the world, I can see the other countries that don't have inclusion whatsoever in their plans. And I think Tokyo will be a very interesting place to see what they've done, because I know when some of the organizing committee from Australia went to Tokyo, there were some issues about accessibility that had to be brought up. I know our cycling manager went over because cycling it actually isn't in Tokyo, it's Mount Fuji Speedway. So we won't be in the village, we'll just be in normal hotels. They had no disability accessible hotel rooms. So, I think we have to push our message as a country that is pretty good with the accessibility out to the rest of the world and say, hey, and I think the Paralympics can have a really big play in that, to, call countries out to say, hey, we are athletes, we are people, we're just as, we have just as much money. We have 4.4 million people in Australia who say they have a disability, and most of them, a fair majority of them, would work, and that's a lot of cash, to be able to go into a shop if you're in a wheelchair to buy something. But if you've got a step that's 10 centimeters high, you're obviously in the wheelchair not going to get into that shop. And I think it's really important that we start calling those out, and people who don't have a disability should be saying something to the owners of those shops and restaurants or wherever it is. Say, hey, how come you don't have anything that somebody in a wheelchair could go into here? And I think if we get more people who don't live with a disability to start speaking out about inclusion, then the better.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So there's a lot of assumptions going around, but we need to look past ourselves and have a bit of empathy and definitely support each other and call that stuff out. Thanks. We also had a question emailed in from Kerry, who's a member of the Frankston Council's Disability Access and Inclusion Committee. And Kerry writes, I think people with disabilities have a lot of wisdom to share and can be a great role models to show resilience and a positive attitude to the youth of today. Do you believe that governments can play a role to help set up meaningful interactions between people with disabilities and the younger generations, such as through sport? If so, how?
Oh, I could tell the government to do a lot of things, but it's getting people to actually do it. Look, I know that we do have a program through Paralympics Australia using Paralympians to go out into schools. I know I've done through the Institute of Sport, done a video which we have during COVID, we've actually sent out to schools if they've wanted a speaker. And I think that what I find when I was in my wheelchair and I had a scooter and I'd be going through, say, the shopping mall, and a little child would come up running up to me and say, "Why are you in that?" And the mother would be absolutely horrified that their child had run up to say that, or even in the wheelchair, "Why are you in that?" And I'm more than happy to have a chat with that child. And I think we have to make sure that parents realize that, we're not something scary. We're not, just because we're moving around differently, doesn't mean that that child should be scared of us. And by doing this, one mother, by doing what she did, grabbing the child and pulling him away and saying, "No, don't ask that. That's not proper." And I stopped her and I said, "No, no, no, let me talk to him." So I think, I'm sure that there are a lot of people with disabilities who would be more than happy to go into schools with the sports that they do, wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby, wheelchair tennis, and giving kids a go just to try it, to see how it is. I know with my trike, everybody sees my trike and they think of themselves when they were back as little kids riding their tricycle. And they think, "Oh yeah, that'll be easy. That's great. That's a trike, not a problem." So actually, when we get somebody new at my cycling club, I get off and say, "Get on, try and ride it." And it is amazing how they can't, because it is a completely different type of bike to ride. It's like I wouldn't be able to get into a hand cycle and know the first thing about how to ride it. So I think it's really important to get kids in schools involved, trying different sports, trying wheelchairs out. I know that I work with Dylan Alcott's company, Get Skilled Access, and we've gone into businesses, and because it's not just children who need to learn, it's businesses. And we go in with wheelchairs and walking sticks and crutches, and we make them use them for half a day and do everything that they would normally do. So I just think it's really important to include everybody. And if the government could come up with some sort of program, I put $1,000 on the fact that I would bet that every person that I know with a disability, whether they're Paralympian or not, because I do know people who aren't Paralympians with disabilities, would be more than happy to say, "Hey, I'll take part. I'll go in and show them what it's like, or I'll spend a day with them." And I think it's really important just to realize that people with disabilities are just normal people. We have the same feelings, the same thoughts as anybody else. We're just using an aid to help us be more independent and mobile.
Thank you. I also had a question from Will that was emailed in. So you've done a number of different sports. So you're swimming, you're rowing, and you're cycling. Will wanted to know which one was your favorite and wanted to get an idea of what your training schedule's like.
Oh, Karen, that's such a good question, because I've had so many people ask me that. And to be honest, I'm not sure I have a favorite. They're all so different. Rowing is probably the toughest sport I've ever done in my life, because there is no relaxing. You are using every bit of your body and your brain. you're competing backwards, you're training backwards. So you're constantly looking behind you, especially if you're in a single, to see where you're going, but your arms and legs are constantly moving, and it is tough. In saying that, I had never as a kid done a team sport. So I loved the fact that I was in a 4 or an 8 and working with a team. So that was exciting when I first started doing that, because I really, really enjoyed that. Swimming has been my lifelong passion. And I must say, though, I have not been in the water since February. And my last mega swim in February at the Fitzroy pool, yeah, just haven't had the impetus to get wet. And cycling right now has taken over my life. So I love them all for different aspects. So I can't actually say which one was my favorite. I could say cycling was my favorite because I got to the Paralympics, but then that would be kind of telling a fib, because I do really like both of them still, rowing and swimming as well. As for my training schedule right now, well, I decided when COVID hit that I was still going to keep training as if I was going to race. And we were very lucky here in Australia that we had a virtual training platform called Full Gas, who actually went over and taped the course. And when you put it onto a smart trainer, you can actually ride the course, the climbs, the downhills, everything. And so I targeted the 2 race dates that I was supposed to race, and I actually did my races on the 1st of September and the 3rd of September. And so the time trial is my main focus. And they were actually surprised I did better than they thought I would, because, I just thought, no, I'm keeping everything the same as it was supposed to be. I then had October to do whatever I wanted, no formal training. And now I'm back into full training. So I ride 6 days a week and do different aspects of riding. Like on a Monday and a Friday, I do some cadence work, and a Tuesday, I do power climbing. Wednesdays are just really long rides with my club. Thursdays are really punchy, hard intervals. And Saturdays are usually just a bit of fun, go out with friends and just do a really long fun ride somewhere. But I also throw in a bit of aerodynamic work on a Friday, and I do gym Monday and Friday, and then stretching and core stuff on Wednesday and Saturday after my ride. So it's pretty full on. I take Sundays and do nothing. Well, I can't say I do nothing, because I do housework then. I do laundry and vacuum and stuff like that. So it's not really a day off, but it's off the bike. So it's still full on, and I'm targeting, even though we have no idea, it's such a fluid environment, and we have no idea if we're going to be going to the World Cup in May or World Championships in June. We're being told that Tokyo is definitely going ahead. And we do have our national championships, which are just outside of Ballarat. They've moved it from January to February, which is kind of good, because it gives us a little break over Christmas and New Year's. Whereas in the past, we never had a break. We had to race like the 4th of January. So New Year's Eve, you could never celebrate. So, but no, it's pretty full on, just as it would normally be in a Paralympic year now.
It does sound full on, and it seems that asking you which is your favorite sport is a bit like asking someone which their favorite child is. So
exactly, yeah.
And Adam would like to know, what is your process for writing a book? Like, how do you figure out what to write when? And yeah, wants to know all about that.
With my first book, Finding Your Inner Gold, it was more about using stories from my life and talking about, when you hit a hurdle, what do you do? And just how to celebrate. We never celebrate enough, I don't think. And in Australia, you look at the Americans and how they celebrate wins, and we just don't do that. And so that was just my thoughts on different things that people had asked me. For this second book, because my family was so entrenched in the police force, and I learned a lot of lessons growing up from every part of my family, from my grandfather, Huey, who, crossed from Scotland, crossed an ocean as a 14-year-old to start a new life in a new country, and became a policeman. And then his son, my dad, followed in his footsteps, and then met my mom. And all the lessons that I learned from them and from my family, and then from my own career, I thought, yeah, I've got a lot I could offer, I guess, lesson wise. And so I just sat down and started writing a bit of history about my family and asking my mom's three sisters and my mom for stories about them growing up in far north Canada. And they were far north. Like, I think my grandmother, when she went up there, when she immigrated from England, had to take like a horse and cart because the train didn't go that far. And that's how far north they were. So learning all those stories, and I just started writing. And during COVID, I thought, well, I have to set a schedule. So I just assumed that I would get up in the morning, I do my meditation, I read a little inspiration thing every morning, and then I would sit down for 90 minutes and I just write what came to my head. But the one thing that I did is at the end of that 90 minutes, I'd leave one sentence unfinished so that the next day I had a sentence that I could finish and it would keep me going. And that's, I just 90 minutes a day for Monday to Friday. I didn't do it on the weekends, just Monday to Friday, like I was going to a job. And it's amazing how fast the time flies and how much you get written when you do 90 minutes a day. And I was lucky that I have a niece who's an Australian, but living in Toronto, we've kind of swapped places. And she's a writer. And so I sent each chapter to her and she edited it and said, oh, I'd really like to hear more about this, or I don't think you need all this in here. And she helped me tremendously get through that. And yeah, and that's how you do it. You just got to sit down and write, even 10 minutes a day. It's amazing how much you can just write about anything, write about your life. And everybody has a story. And that's the one thing people say, oh, I can never write about me. There's nothing interesting. Yes, there is. Everybody has a story. And if you get somebody talking, it's amazing what you can pull out of people. You just write your thoughts and feelings. And it's amazing how fast a book can come together.
I love that. So discipline, but yeah, leaving that unfinished sentence so you've got somewhere to pick up from the next day. That's
Yeah.
awesome
And it's funny because we all on January 1st make these resolutions, right? And we all decide that we're gonna commit. We're gonna be motivated. We're gonna go to the gym. And after 3 weeks and we see nothing happening, that motivation starts to die. And as an elite athlete, I'm not motivated all the time. It's not the word motivation, it's the word commitment. And you just use that, and you have to commit if you want to do something. And that's if I wake up first thing in the morning, and like on Wednesdays I have to leave the house at 5 on my trike to ride down to Elwood to meet the girls at 6 o'clock. And there's mornings where I get up and go, oh, no way, there's no motivation there to get up, like 4:15 to get up. And then I think about what my competitors are doing in the US or Germany or England, and I think, oh, time to get up. They're probably out training, so I better go. And it's that word commitment.
Excellent. All right, we might start wrapping it up now. I will finish off with a comment from Lisa in the chat. So thank you for sharing your story, Carol. Your passion, dedication, and abilities has made you such an inspirational woman. It was wonderful to connect into this event. Thank you, Frankston City Council. And yes, thank you, Carol. I know you do have to run. You've got a lot of other interviews and stuff to do tonight, and also the Victorian Disability Sport and Recreation Awards, for which you are up for Female Sportsman of the Year. So I wish you all the best with that, all the best with your upcoming book, and also we'll be following your sporting career for sure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of this special day.